You touched it. The sound wasn't words Jax understood, not precisely, but the meaning hit him like a physical blow, dense with something akin to shock, something else heavy and resonant he couldn't name. He froze, hand hovering over the intricate, crystalline latticework humming faintly on the wall of the derelict ship's primary chamber. The air in the cavernous space shifted, suddenly thick with a scent that prickled his skin, something metallic and sweet and utterly foreign. He turned slowly, his pulse hammering against his ribs. She stood maybe 10 feet away, silhouetted against a faint, pulsing light filtering through ancient vents high overhead. Not human. He'd known that from the moment he'd boarded this long-dead vessel, felt the wrongness of the empty corridors, the strange, silent hum beneath his boots. But seeing her, this close, was different. Her form was fluid, impossible lines shifting slightly in the gloom. And then she moved, and the internal light bloomed. Not just a passive glow, but intricate patterns, lines, spots flaring across her body, a language written in pure energy. It was breathtaking, terrifying. Touched what? Jax managed, his voice rough. He kept his hands visible, empty. Scavenging these dead ships out here on the fringe was risky enough without running into whatever she was. She didn't look like any known species cataloged by the consortium or any of the pirate factions he'd traded with. She was taller than him, lean and graceful. Her head tilted, and the light patterns on her neck and shoulders rippled, like water under moonlight. He couldn't make out features in the conventional sense. No eyes or mouth he recognized, but he felt her gaze, sharp and focused, pinning him in place. The Weaver's heart. The sound came again, clearer this time, perhaps aided by some unseen translator tech, or maybe just the sheer intensity of her focus overriding the language barrier. The resonance was back, deeper now, vibrating in his bones. The bond is cast. Bond. Jax's brain stumbled over the concept. Look, I was just scavenging, checking for tech. I didn't hurt anything. I didn't mean to bond with your wall art. He risked a small step back, away from the humming crystal lattice. The air grew even heavier, the scent more potent, clinging to him. The light patterns on her flared brighter, a chaotic, beautiful burst that made his vision swim. It is not wall art. The correction was soft but absolute. It is the center, the core, to touch it with intent. It is a signal, to the vessel, to the one. Signal? To who? He felt a cold dread beginning to coil in his gut. This wasn't just a chance encounter with a squatter. This felt ritualistic, dangerous. His hand instinctively went to the sidearm tucked into his belt, but he stopped himself. Any sudden move felt like a bad idea. She hadn't shown aggression, only this intense, unsettling presence and the strange talk of bonds and signals. To the Weaver, she stated, and this time the resonance was layered with something that felt like reverence, and something else darker, heavier. It calls the bondmate. You answered. I accidentally bumped it. Jax protested, a flicker of genuine panic overriding his usual sarcastic shield. It was humming. I thought it might be power conduit. I just felt it. He remembered now. The faint warmth under his fingertips. The way the humming seemed to respond to his touch. Her head tilted again, the light patterns on her body settling into a mesmerizing, rhythmic pulse. It wasn't just visual. He felt it, a subtle thrumming deep inside him, echoing the hum of the lattice. Intent is not measured by thought, human. It is measured by resonance. Your core resonated with the Weaver's heart. The call is made. The vessel knows. The vessel? Jax felt a bead of sweat trail down his temple. The ship? It wasn't just dead, it was a vessel, and it knew he'd touched the crystal. He glanced around the massive, silent chamber, suddenly feeling very small and exposed. The scent in the air intensified again, wrapping around him, warm and intoxicating in a way that was deeply unnerving. His skin felt alive, hypersensitive. The bioluminescent patterns on her shifted again, flowing down her arms, pooling momentarily around where her hands would be, before spreading across her torso in intricate waves. It wasn't just light, it felt communicative, emotional. He had the unnerving sense he was being read, probed, understood on a level that bypassed words entirely. It prepares, she said, her voice now closer, the sound carrying that strange resonance that vibrated through him. She had moved without him noticing, gliding closer across the floor. He could see more detail now, the subtle texture of her skin, scale, something organic and non-human. The glow wasn't just surface light. It seemed to come from within, pulsing with her movements. It was beautiful in a wild, untamed way that stirred something ancient and wary in him. Prepares for what? He managed, his voice barely a whisper. The air thrummed. The scent grew stronger. The visual patterns on her body flared, mirroring the rhythm in the air. He felt a dizzying sense of disorientation, like the room was tilting. The claiming, she stated, her form stopping only a few feet away. The light on her face area pulsed rapidly, like an accelerated heartbeat. You have called. I have answered. You are bonded. She reached out a hand, not towards him, but towards a humming crystal lattice. As her fingers, long and tipped with something that looked like polished obsidian, brushed against it, the light across her body exploded in a blinding flash. The sound wasn't sound. It was a sensation, a wave of pure energy that slammed into Jax, knocking the air from his lungs. He stumbled back, vision whiting out, ears ringing with the echo of that silent scream of light. When his sight cleared, she was gone. The humming of the lattice was louder now, more insistent, and the air was vibrant with the scent of her and the terrifying certainty that something irreversible had just happened. The ship was no longer dead. It was waiting, and whatever the vessel knew, he had a feeling it wasn't going to be good for him. An intense physical awareness settled over him, a humming under his skin that mirrored the lattice, and the sudden, overwhelming sensation of being watched, not just by her, but by the ship itself. His heart hammered, not just with fear, but with a strange, potent anticipation that was deeply confusing. He stayed frozen for a long moment, breathing hard, the potent, sweet metallic scent still clinging to him, the phantom echo of that burst of light behind his eyes. The ship hummed, a low, resonant frequency that seemed to vibrate in his bones now, not just in the walls. The crystalline lattice glowed more brightly, its pulses quicker, mimicking the pattern he'd seen flare on her. He tried to think, to rationalize. Alien tech, some kind of proximity sensor, maybe a defense mechanism? But the bond talk, the claiming, felt too personal, too focused. And that scent, it was still here, strong, wrapping around him, a physical presence in the air. Cautiously, he moved towards the main corridor, his boots echoing in the vast silence. Every shadow seemed deeper, every creak of the ancient hull sharper. He felt that sense of being watched intensify, a prickling on his neck, a feeling that the ship itself was aware of his presence, assessing him. He reached the entrance to the chamber and peered out. The corridor was dark, dusty, looking just as derelict as when he'd arrived. No sign of her. He pulled out his small, handheld scanner, checking for life signs, energy readings. Nothing unusual, just a background radiation of an old drive core and a faint, persistent hum. Okay, Jax, pull it together, he muttered to himself. Try to inject some normalcy into the bizarre situation. Weird alien chick. Weird glowy tech. Probably triggered some kind of alarm. Just gotta get out of here. But the casual tone felt false. The scent was too real, too strong. It was somehow connected to him now, clinging to his clothes, his skin. He caught a whiff of it and felt a strange, internal shift, a warmth spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with fear. He needed to get back to his own ship, the Stardust Drifter, currently docked precariously to the hull near a breach. He started walking, moving faster now, his senses on high alert. The corridor seemed longer than before. The hum was everywhere. He kept scanning, sweeping the dark corners with his headlamp. Still nothing. But the feeling of being watched wasn't just external. It felt like it was coming from inside him, too, a strange resonance that mirrored the ship's hum. He reached the airlock chamber he'd used aboard, his breath fogging in the cold, stale air. His own ship was just outside, a familiar, comforting shape against the starfield. He stepped up to the inner airlock door, punched in the code. The pressure cycled, hissed, and the door slid open. He stepped into the small lock, relieved. Almost out. Just the outer door now. He reached for the external release when the light patterns reappeared, not on her body this time, but on the wall inside the airlock. Intricate, pulsing designs bloomed on the metal, following the lines of the doorframe, flowing across the controls. And the scent hit him again, stronger than ever, filling the small space, overwhelming his senses. His head spun. Then her voice, closer than before, right behind him. You cannot leave. He whipped around, his heart leaping into his throat. She was there, inside the airlock with him. How? He hadn't seen her move, hadn't heard a sound. She simply was. The bioluminescent patterns on her were muted now, a soft, steady glow that outlined her form in the dim light. Her head tilted again, and he had the distinct impression of curiosity, perhaps even concern. Why not? He demanded, trying to keep his voice steady. The airlock was tiny. They were inches apart. He could feel the warmth radiating from her, a gentle heat against the skin. The scent was almost unbearable here, intoxicating, confusing. It was doing something strange to his body, making his limbs feel heavy, his thoughts cloudy. The bond requires proximity, she stated simply, as if explaining basic physics. The light patterns on her shifted slightly, flowing across her arms in slow waves. It felt like she was expressing something calming or perhaps possessive. He couldn't tell. Bond? Look, I told you it was an accident. I don't want to be bonded to you or this ship or whatever's going on here. Panic flared hot and sharp. This wasn't just a weird encounter. She was stopping him, trapping him. The light patterns on her pulsed faster, a rapid, almost questioning rhythm. Accident? Your resonance was clear, strong. You called the weaver. I called the repair technician. Or maybe a tow service. Definitely not a weaver. He was practically shouting now, pressing himself back against the inner door of the airlock. Try and create space that wasn't there. She took a small step closer, and the airlock felt even smaller. The scent was a physical weight. He could feel her presence intensely, a powerful, focused energy. The muted glow outlined the strange, elegant curve of her shoulder, the subtle articulation of her hand resting against the airlock wall near his head. The calling is binding, human. It cannot be undone. Everything can be undone, he argued desperately. There has to be a way. Some kind of counter-ritual. Hey! A release form? I'll sign anything. The light patterns pulsed slowly now, a steady, deep rhythm that somehow felt like sadness or deep misunderstanding. There is no release. The bond mate is chosen by the weaver. You touched the heart. You were accepted. He stared at her, at the impossible, glowing patterns, the scent, the deep resonance filling the small space. This wasn't just an alien. She was something else. Something ancient and bound by rules he couldn't begin to comprehend. His carefully constructed walls of sarcasm and attachment felt useless here. He was trapped in an airlock with a glowing alien who claimed he had accidentally married her, or worse. The micro-tension in the airlock was suffocating. Physical closeness, emotional confusion, and the external pressure of needing to escape a ship that now felt like a cage. Okay, fine, Jack said, his voice dropping, laced with a weary resignation. He wasn't getting out of the airlock like this. Let's say, for a second, I believe you. I touched your weaver heart thing, and now I'm bonded. What does that mean? What happens now? He tried to sound calm, practical, the way he handled busted engines or stubborn clients. It felt like he was trying to reason with the force of nature. The light patterns on her body shifted, flowing into new, complex shapes, like a slow, deliberate thought process made visible. The scent in the airlock seemed to soften slightly, losing some of its initial overwhelming intensity, becoming something warm and comforting, strangely familiar even though he knew it was alien. He realized with jolt that the intensity of the scent, the light patterns, her physical proximity, were all communication, a language more fundamental than sound. It means, she said, her voice soft, resonating with that deep thrum, that the claiming begins. The bond mate joins the one. You will be integrated. Integrated? His back pressed harder against the airlock door. That sounded unpleasant, like becoming part of the ship, or part of her. His rogue instinct screamed danger. Look, I'm more of a freelance kind of guy, not really looking for a full-time commitment, especially not with a glowing ship and its representative. She took another step closer, and this time she reached out. Her hand, the one with the dark, obsidian-like fingertips, moved slowly toward his face. He tensed, ready to recoil, but his body felt heavy, sluggish, almost paralyzed by the strange atmosphere and the scent. The light patterns on her arm intensified as her hand came closer. He expected a touch, but her fingertips stopped an inch from his cheek. He felt the warmth radiating from her, the subtle vibration in the air between them. Your energy signature, she explained, her voice a low hum that vibrated in his chest. It resonates with the Weaver. It matches the pattern required for the bond. It is unique. The light patterns on her hand shifted, mimicking the swirling lines he remembered seeing on the crystalline lattice. He swallowed hard. Unique? Great. Is that a good thing? Her head tilted again. It is a required thing. You did not choose, but you were chosen. Chosen, bonded, claimed, integrated. None of this sounded like a casual relationship. This was feeling less like a misunderstanding and more like destiny, dictated by ancient alien tech and a beautiful, terrifying woman made of light and strange scents. Right, he said, trying to inject some sarcasm, but it fell flat. So, the Weaver Heart puts out a Lonely Hearts ad. I touch it by accident, and now I'm signed up for, what? Eternal servitude? Alien marriage? What exactly does a bondmate do? The light patterns on her body shifted again, this time faster, more dynamic, almost like laughter, though her form remained impassive. The scent in the air seemed to carry a hint of amusement. The bondmate completes the one, shares resonance, provides stability. She paused, and the light patterns on her face area pulsed, a sudden, intense flare, and provides warmth. The word warmth hung in the air, charged with something that made his skin prickle all over again, not with fear this time, but with sudden, sharp awareness of her proximity, the subtle heat radiating from her, the confusing pull to scent. It wasn't just a physical sensation. It felt like a promise or maybe a demand. Warmth, he repeated, his voice hoarse. The small airlock suddenly felt intensely intimate, charged with energy that was both alien and undeniably sensual. He could feel the faint vibration of her fingertips near his face, the warmth of her body inches away. He felt desired, in a way that bypassed language and logic, a primal response to her glowing presence and the overwhelming scent. She didn't answer, just held her hand near his face, the light patterns on her shifting in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. He found himself watching them, mesmerized, his earlier panic starting to recede, replaced by a potent curiosity and a strange, growing pull toward her. The air wasn't just scented. It felt alive, vibrating with unspoken communication. He could feel his own internal resonance responding, a faint echo of the hum from the ship, the lattice, and her. He was starting to integrate, just as she'd said, not into the ship, but into the strange, alien connection. And he wasn't sure he could stop it, or if he even wanted it anymore. The external threat of being trapped was still there, but the immediate tension was now purely physical and emotional, focused entirely on the space between them and the tiny airlock. The airlock remained silent, save for the soften of the ship and the subtle shift of Nyla's. He decided to call her Nyla in his head, needing a name, any name, for this impossible being. Internal light patterns. The scent was still potent, a sweet, metallic perfume that made his head feel light, and his body strangely heavy and responsive. Her hand was still close to his face, the tips of her fingers hovering just shy of contact. He watched the light flow across her body, intricate patterns blooming and fading, a silent, mesmerizing dialogue that spoke of patience, intensity, and an unwavering focus on him. Okay, Nyla, he tried the name tentatively. The light patterns on her shifted slightly, a flicker he interpreted as acknowledgement. So, you're telling me this ship is the vessel, this glowing wall thing is the Weaver's heart, and by touching it, I somehow sign myself up to be your bondmate and integrated means. Hang around and keep you warm? He tried to keep the sarcasm light, but there was a tremor of uncertainty underneath. The light patterns on her body seemed to deepen, the colors richer, more defined. The vessel is the shell. The weaver is the core consciousness. The heart is the point of resonance. You connected. The claiming is the joining. The bondmate shares a resonance, provides a stability for the weaver song. Weaver song. More poetry. More baffling alien concepts. Okay, still not entirely clear on the job description. Jax muttered. But if I'm stuck here, why the airlock? Why not just drag me to wherever this claiming happens? The light patterns on her torso expanded, spreading like ripples in water, carrying a sense of complexity, maybe even reluctance. The airlock contains the initial surge. The resonance can be disruptive to unbonded matter. It prepares the bondmate, and it confirms a willingness. My willingness? Jax frowned. I wasn't exactly jumping up and down to sign the dotted line here. I was trying to leave. Her head tilted, and the light patterns on her face pulsed with a distinct rhythm that felt like questioning. You did not physically resist the calling. Your core resonance responded. That is willingness, in the language of the weaver. My core resonance, he echoed dryly. Right. So, feeling lightheaded and trapped counts as consent where you come from? He felt a wave of indignation, quickly followed by a more primal awareness of the physical effect she was having on him. The scent, the light, the resonance. They were bypassing his rational mind, working on something deeper, older. His body felt warm, buzzing, strangely eager. It is the truest form, she responded simply. Beyond thought, beyond spoken word. The weaver sees the core. He sighed, running a hand over his face. This was insane. Absolutely, wonderfully, terrifyingly insane. He was in an airlock with an alien woman who communicated with light and scent, who believed he had committed to some kind of cosmic marriage by touching a glowing rock, and his body, traitorously, was starting to feel less like fighting and more like leaning into the weirdness. He looked at her again, really looked at her alien form, the impossible elegance of her lines, the endless depth of the shifting light patterns. There was an undeniable beauty to it, a raw, wild grace that was unlike anything he had ever encountered. And the intensity of her focus on him, the unwavering belief in this bond, was profoundly unsettling and strangely compelling. He'd spent years adrift, isolated, running from his past. The idea of being chosen, even by accident, by a force as profound and strange as this was a lot to process. Okay, he said, the sarcasm gone, replaced by a hesitant curiosity. If I'm bonded, what do you get out of this? Beyond someone to keep you warm? The light patterns on her deepen again, swirling and building to a crescendo, before settling into a steady, soft glow. I am the echo, the herald of the weaver's song. I guide the bondmate, protect the bond. I become unified with the bondmate's resonance to amplify the weaver's song. Unified, amplify. It still sounded like he was becoming a battery, but the way she said it, the resonance in her voice, carried a weight of purpose, of ancient duty. She wasn't just some random alien. She was tied to this ship, this weaver, this ritual, in a way that was central to her existence. He looked down at his hand, the one that had touched the crystal lattice. He couldn't see anything different, but he could feel it, a faint tingling sensation, a connection to the humming of the ship that was now a constant background noise in his awareness. So, he said slowly, looking back up at her, meeting the unwavering focus of her light patterns, you're stuck with me, and I'm stuck with this. He gestured vaguely between them, the airlock, the ship, the light patterns on her face pulsed in a way that felt affirmative. The bond is eternal. Eternal. That word landed with a heavy thud. Jax had trouble committing to buying fresh rations, let alone eternity. But looking at her, bathed in the soft glow of her internal light, feeling the strange, compelling pull of her presence, the suffocating panic was starting to give way to something else. Curiosity, a dangerous fascination, and the potent, undeniable attraction of the unknown. He was trapped, yes, But he was trapped with her, and she was claiming him with an intensity that was both terrifying and, against his better judgment, deeply intriguing. He had nowhere to run, not anymore. The tension was settling into a deep, resonant hum, echoing the ship, echoing her, echoing something new within himself. The small airlock felt less like a cage now and more like a cocoon, filled with the soft of the ship, the strange, comforting scent, and Nyla's luminous presence. Jax hadn't moved, hadn't tried to open the outer door again. He just watched her, watched the mesmerizing dance of light on her form, feeling the subtle vibrations in the air, the warmth radiating from her body. His earlier panic had subsided, replaced by a profound sense of disorientation and a strange, potent acceptance. "So," he said, his voice quiet in the confined space. "What happens? Next? The claiming?" He still didn't like the sound of that word, but curiosity was winning over fear. The light patterns on her shifted, flowing across her torso in broad, slow waves, a pattern that felt like anticipation, or perhaps readiness. The scent in the air intensified slightly, becoming sweeter, richer. The claiming is the merging of resonances, the alignment of cores, the joining of the bondmate to the weaver's song. Merging of resonances, alignment of cores. He translated that in his head. Sounded an awful lot like becoming one, or at least becoming very, very close. His body responded to the thought with sudden, sharp jolt of awareness. The heavy, sluggish feeling was gone, replaced by a buzzing energy under his skin. The scent was doing something to him, bypassing his brain entirely, targeting something deeper, more primal. She took another step closer, and the distance between them vanished. Her body, warm and vibrating with internal light, was now pressed gently against his. He could feel the subtle texture of her form through his worn flight suit, the impossible lines of her contours fitting against his in ways that defied his understanding of anatomy, yet felt strangely right. The light patterns flared briefly where their bodies touched, a silent acknowledgement of the physical connection. "The weaver requires harmony," she murmured, her voice a low resonance that vibrated through his chest, through his bones. "The bondmate's core must sing with the weaver's song. This requires proximity, intimacy. Intimacy." There was no mistaking the meaning of that word, not with her body pressed against his, the potent scent filling his lungs, the warmth seeping into his skin, the subtle, intoxicating vibration running between them. This wasn't just about keeping her warm or amplifying a signal. This was physical, deeply, profoundly physical. He felt a tremor run through him, a mix of fear, wonder, and an undeniable rush of pure, raw sensation. He hadn't been this close to another living being, not like this, in a long time, and never, ever, to anything like her. His hands, which had been pressed against the airlock door behind him, slowly, hesitantly, moved to rest against her back. Her form felt firm, yet yielding, impossibly smooth under his touch. The light patterns beneath his fingertips pulsed in response, a silent language he was starting to feel rather than see. "Intimacy," he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. The airlock was silent, save for the hum and the sound of his own ragged breathing. His mind was a chaotic storm of cultural confusion, survival instinct, and overpowering physical sensation. His body, however, was making its own decisions. The strange scent was like an aphrodisiac, the vibration a constant source of sensual stimulation. She leaned into him, her form molding against his. The light patterns on her body flowed and swirled, concentrating in waves around his hands, his chest, where they touched. He felt a strange connection deepen, a sense of being woven together, not just physically, but on some fundamental energetic level. The hum of the ship seemed to deepen, echoing the resonance that was building between them. "The song is strongest. In union," she whispered, her voice now a low, guttural hum that resonated directly in his bones. Her head tilted back, and the light patterns on her neck flared, sending waves of intense sensation down his spine. He felt himself responding instinctively, drawn into the ancient, alien rhythm of the weaver, the vessel, and this creature light and scent. He was completely lost, adrift in a sea of alien sensation. This wasn't how he'd imagined dying or getting rich or even just getting off this rock. But here he was, about to be claimed and integrated, through intimacy, by a being who was simultaneously terrifying, breathtaking, and utterly captivating. The accidental touch of a crystal had led him here, to this tiny airlock, pressed against an alien body that pulsed with light and promise. And in that moment, in the overwhelming flood of sensory input and confusing emotion, he found himself leaning in, surrendering to the inevitable, his own core resonance answering the strange, silent call of the Weaver song. The tension was electric, purely physical, escalating rapidly towards something he didn't understand, but felt deep in his core. The airlock, already small, seemed to shrink further around them, the space filled entirely by Nyla's luminous presence and the potent, intoxicating scent. Jax found himself sinking deeper into the strange sensory world she inhabited. His hands, resting on her back, felt the subtle movements of the light patterns under his touch, translating them into a language his body understood before his mind could catch up. The hum of the ship intensified, vibrating through his feet, up his legs, meeting the resonance building between them. Her touch wasn't like human touch. There was no variable temperature, no soft skin yielding to bone and muscle. It was a constant warmth, a smooth, almost frictionless surface beneath his hands, and the light patterns were felt as much as seen, flowing beneath the surface like currents. It was alien, yes, but not cold. It was alive, vibrant, responsive in a way that bypassed his expectations and went straight to a primitive sense of connection. She tilted her head further back, and the light patterns on her neck and head flared, sending a cascade of sensations through him. It wasn't pain, not exactly, but an intense pressure, a buzzing behind his eyes, a feeling like his own energy was being drawn out, mingled with hers. He felt dizzy, his senses reeling, yet grounded by the physical weight of her against him. "The alignment requires vulnerability," she murmured, her voice a low, guttural thrumming that seemed to bypass his ears and vibrate directly in his core. The shell must yield to the song. As she spoke, the light patterns on her body seemed to deepen, the colors richer, more intense, swirling together in complex, rapidly changing configurations. The scent grew stronger, pulling at something deep inside him, blurring the lines between desire and disorientation. He felt her hands move, sliding up his arms, her touch leaving trails of warmth and a subtle, echoing vibration on his skin. Her fingers, with their obsidian tips, traced the lines of his forearms, his shoulders, movements that were slow, deliberate, exploring. Each touch sent a wave of sensation through him, making his skin tingle and his breath catch in his throat. This wasn't just exploration. It felt like mapping, understanding his physical form, his energy signature. "My core, it resonates with yours," she whispered, the words flowing into him like a current. "The song, it finds its harmony in you." As she spoke, the light patterns on her body intensified, particularly around her chest area, pulsing with a rhythm that was faster, more urgent than before. The sound of the ship's hum seemed to sync with her pulses, creating a powerful, resonant beat that filled the airlock. He found himself responding, his hands tightening slightly on her back, pulling her closer, even though there was no closer pull. He could feel the intricate structure of her form against him, the undeniable alienness of her body, yet the connection felt intensely, undeniably intimate. His body was reacting on pure instinct, driven by the overwhelming sensory input, the strange, alluring scent, and the undeniable power of her presence. He didn't understand the weaver, the vessel, the song, but he understood this. The raw, physical tension building between them, the vulnerability required for the strange merging of resonances, the overwhelming, compelling drive of this accidental ritual he had triggered. He was losing control, losing himself in the alien intimacy of the moment, surrendering to the current that was pulling him deeper into her world, into the heart of the Weaver song. His mind was a whirl of confusion, but his body was humming, responding, accepting the inevitable. The airlock, the ship, the entire encounter had become distilled into this single point of contact, this merging of two utterly different beings driven by an ancient, accidental command. The tension was physical, overwhelming, leading to an explosive release that bypassed thought, driven purely by alien rhythm and primal human response. The airlock was no longer an airlock. It was a vibrant, pulsing core. The hum of the ship had reached a crescendo, vibrating through Jax with an intensity that mirrored a ride of light and sensation on Nyla's body. The scent was a tidal wave, drowning his senses, pulling him under. His body, buzzing with energy, felt both incredibly heavy and strangely weightless, anchored only by the weight of Nyla pressed against him. Her light patterns were no longer distinct shapes, but a swirling, shifting galaxy of color and light, flowing over her form, surging and retreating like an internal ocean. The rhythm was faster now, a frantic, intoxicating beat that matched the pounding of his own heart. Her grip on him tightened, her obsidian-tipped fingers pressing into his back, a grounding point in the sensory storm. The song, "It welcomes the bondmate," she murmured, her voice a fragmented sound lost in the rising tide of resonance. The court opens. As she spoke, he felt a profound shift occur, not just around them, but within him. It was like a door opening deep inside his chest, releasing a flood of energy he hadn't known he possessed. It mingled with her light, her scent, the ship's hum, creating a vortex of sensation that was both overwhelming and intensely pleasurable. His own body felt like it was glowing, not with visible light, but with an internal radiance, a warmth that spread from his core outwards, meeting the external warmth of her body. The air between them crackled with energy. He felt the subtle texture of her against him, the alien contours of her form, but his focus was lost in the sensory overload, the taste of the air, thick with her scent, the sound of the hum, of physical force, the sight of the swirling light, a language of pure emotion and energy. His hands moved instinctively, finding purchase on her form, gripping her as the intensity built. He felt her arch against him, a silent, resonant cry of sensation that echoed deep within him. The light patterns on her body surged one last time, a blinding, beautiful nova that seemed to consume the airlock, consuming them both. And then release. Not a sudden cessation, but a slow, resonant fading, like the echo of a powerful chord. The intense light subsided, leaving behind a soft, steady glow. The scent lingered warm and comforting now. The ship's hum lowered to a gentle purr. Jack sagged against her, breathing hard, his mind slowly starting to reassemble itself. His body still buzzed with residual energy, a deep, satisfied ache settling into his bones. He was trembling slightly, whether from exhaustion or the sheer intensity of the experience. He didn't know. Nyla remained against him. Her form relaxed, the light patterns on her body now muted, flowing in slow, contented waves. She felt heavier now, more solid in his arms. The initial panic was gone, replaced by a profound sense of calm, of connection, and a confusing mix of relief and wonder. This was the claiming. This was the integration. It wasn't just physical intimacy, though it had undeniably been that, on a level he couldn't have imagined. It was a merging, a resonance, a deep, fundamental connection forged in the heart of an alien ship, driven by an accidental touch and the ancient will of a non-human intelligence. He slowly lifted his head, looking at her face, or where her face should be. The light patterns were soft, gentle, conveying something that felt like quiet satisfaction and a deep, possessive calm. "Well," he said, his voice hoarse. "That was unexpected." The light patterns on her pulsed softly, a rhythm that felt like amusement. She didn't speak, but he felt the response ripple through their connection, a sense of deep contentment and an undeniable claim. He was bonded, integrated. He belonged to the Weaver and to her. And in the quiet aftermath of the sensory storm, pressed against her warm, glowing form, the terrifying certainty of being trapped was tempered by the strange, compelling reality of being claimed, wholly and irrevocably, by this alien being. The tension had released into a shared resonance, a silent acknowledgement of their new, intertwined reality. They remained in the airlock for a long time, the hum of the ship a gentle lullaby, Nyla's light a soft blanket around them. Jax's body slowly returned to normal, or what passed for normal after being saturated with alien resonance and potent pheromones. He was still pressed against her, and she showed no inclination to move. The scent was still strong, but now it felt less like an overwhelming force and more like her, familiar, comforting. He finally stirred, easing back slightly, enough to look at her more clearly. Her light patterns were still flowing, slow and steady, across her form. He could see more detail now in the softer glow, the subtle articulation of her limbs, the smooth, non-reflective texture of her skin. She was still an enigma, but she felt less like a threat and more like something solid to hold on to in this bewildering reality. "So," he said, breaking the silence, the quiet intimacy of the airlock, making him feel oddly vulnerable. "Now that I'm integrated, what exactly is my role? Do I get a uniform? Dental plan?" He couldn't help the sarcasm, a familiar shield in unfamiliar territory. The light patterns on her torso rippled, a soft wave that felt like a sigh, or perhaps exasperation. The bondmate provides resonance, stability for the weaver's song. "You are the anchor." "The anchor," he repeated. That didn't sound like a very active role. "Just stand here and hum?" Her head tilted. The light patterns on her face area pulsed with familiar rhythm that he was beginning to associate with mild amusement. The weaver is ancient. Without a bondmate's core to stabilize its song, its consciousness can become fragmented, dispersed. You hold it together. "I'm a cosmic paperweight," he summarized. A new pattern of light bloomed on her, a rapid, bright pulse followed by a slow fade. He was starting to learn her language, the visual and sensory communication that ran deeper than words. This felt like agreement, tinged with something warmer. "And you," he asked, "what's your role now that I'm anchored?" "I am the echo," she repeated. "The bridge between the weaver and the bondmate. I interpret the song. I guide the bondmate's resonance." "So, you're the translator," Jack said. "And the chaperone?" The light patterns on her shifted again, flowing down her body in complex, overlapping waves. This pattern felt different, more open, more exposed. "I am also bonded to the bondmate, by the weaver's will. My core aligns with yours, just as yours aligns with the weaver's. Bonded to the bondmate." "Right. So, it wasn't just him and the glowing ship. It was him, the glowing ship, and her, all tangled up in some ancient cosmic ritual. This was getting more complicated by the minute, but as she said it, as he felt the connection deepen between them, a warmth spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with the ambient temperature. It didn't feel like a burden. It felt significant, profound. He looked into the shifting light patterns on her face area, trying to read the unreadable. "And what do you want out of this, Nyla? Now that you're bonded to a sarcastic human paperweight?" Her light pattern seemed to slow, settling into a steady, deep glow that radiated a profound sense of focus. The scent in the air intensified slightly, becoming rich and warm. "My purpose is the weaver song, to preserve it, to nurture it. You are now integral to that purpose. You are part of the song." She paused, and the light on her face pulsed with that intense, focused rhythm he'd seen before. "And my purpose is to protect the bond, to protect you from any who would disrupt the song or steal the bondmate." Steal the bondmate. The word sent a shiver down his spine. It wasn't just about accidentally getting married to a ship. There were external forces who might want this bondmate status. It added a layer of immediate, external danger to the already bizarre situation. His rogue instincts, dulled by the sensory overload of the claiming, snapped back into focus. "Anyone like other ships?" he asked, his gaze flicking toward the outer airlock door, towards a cold, uncaring expanse of space outside. The light patterns on her body flowed into a complex, agitated pattern. This, he understood. This was alarm. This was threat. Others know the calling. They seek the weaver's power. They would not respect the bond. "Great," he muttered. "So we're bonded, integrated, anchored cosmic paperweights, and now we've got targets on our backs." He looked at Nyla, at the unwavering intensity of her glowing presence. He'd come looking for salvage, maybe a few credits. He'd found a cosmic marriage in a whole lot of trouble. But as he stood there, pressed against her, feeling the deep hum of their connection, he knew he wouldn't trade it. Not now. Not after the claiming. The emotional tension was high, a mix of fear, responsibility, and the dawning realization of a shared, dangerous future. The moment the tension of potential pursuers was introduced, the quiet intimacy of the airlock evaporated, replaced by a prickling sense of vulnerability. Jax pulled back from Nyla, scanning the airlock door, his eyes instinctively searching for threats. Nyla's light pattern shifted from alarm to a steady, defensive glow, radiating a sense of readiness. "Who are these others?" Jax asked, his voice low and urgent. "Are they here? Did my touching the rock broadcast my location?" Nyla's light patterns shifted rapidly, a complex display of information and warning. The calling is resonance, not transmission. But the Weaver's song, once awakened, is felt across the void. Those who seek its power, they feel the shift. They will come. Great. How much time do we have? He was already thinking, planning escape routes, defensive positions. Old habits died hard. Even if he was bonded to a glowing alien in her ship, his survival instincts were purely human. Her light patterns settled into a rhythmic pulse that felt like measurement calculation. The speed of perception varies. Days, perhaps less. We must leave the airlock. The Weaver's heart must be shielded. And the bondmate must be secured. Secured? That word always made him nervous. What does secured mean? Her light patterns flowed down her arms, settling into a pattern around her hands that felt strangely gentle yet firm. Protected, guarded. You are vulnerable outside the core resonance, until your core fully aligns. And how long does that take? Her light patterns hesitated, a flickering uncertainty entering the flow. The process varies. It has been long since a bondmate was called. Right. He was the first in a while. Lucky him. Okay, well, standing in an airlock arguing about terminology isn't securing anyone, he said, stepping back further, gesturing towards a corridor. Lead the way, Echo. Where's this Weaver's heart we need to shield? Nyla turned, her movements fluid and silent. The light patterns on her body flowed like guidance, pointing the way down the main corridor, deeper into the ship. The oppressive sense of being watched was still there, but now it felt less like a passive presence and more like the active gaze of the Weaver itself, assessing him, relying on him. They moved through the labyrinthine corridors of the ancient ship. Nyla glided effortlessly, her bioluminescence providing the only light, casting strange, shifting shadows that danced ahead of them. Jax followed, his boots echoing faintly on the metal deck plating. His hand never far from the sidearm he probably wouldn't be able to use against anything they were likely to face. He kept his senses sharp, listening for any sound beyond the hum of the ship and Nyla's silent movement. As they walked, the hum intensified, becoming a physical sensation, a deep thrumming in the metal, in the air, in his own body. The scent of Nyla was constant, a rich, sweet metallic anchor in the strangeness. Her light patterns, flowing ahead, seemed to respond to the ship's architecture, brightening near certain points, dimming near others, a visual conversation he couldn't understand but felt intimately connected to. They reached the chamber where he had first touched the crystal lattice. The lattice glowed brighter now, pulsing in sync with Nyla's own light patterns. It felt like they were returning to the heart of the matter, the core of this bizarre, accidental destiny. We must reinforce the primary containment field, Nyla said, her voice a low resonance in the chamber. The lattice requires energy. The bondmate's resonance can supply it. Right, back to being a battery, Jax muttered, but there was less resistance in his voice now. The urgency, the shared danger, was creating a new kind of bond, one based on necessity and mutual reliance. He was still a captive, in a sense, but he was also integral to her purpose, to the survival of this ancient entity and its echo. He moved towards the lattice, hesitation warring with the strange pull he felt towards it. As he approached, the humming intensified and the crystal pulsed faster. Nyla came up beside him, her light patterns flowing into his, mingling at the point where he would touch the lattice. Place your hand upon the heart, she instructed, her voice soft but firm. Let the resonance flow. Let the song build. He hesitated for a moment, looking from the glowing lattice to Nyla's glowing form. This was it, leaning into the weirdness, committing fully to the accidental bond. He took a deep breath, smelling the familiar, intoxicating scent of her, feeling the hum of the ship, the echo of the claiming in his bones. Then he reached out and placed his hand on the crystalline lattice. Energy surged through him, not painful like the initial burst, but powerful and controlled. It flowed from his core, meeting the lattice's resonance, amplified by Nyla's presence beside him. The light on the lattice flared, blindingly bright, and Jax felt himself momentarily lost in the pure, raw power of the Weaver's song. When his vision cleared, the lattice was glowing steadily, the hum strong and stable. He felt drained, but also connected in a way that went beyond the physical or emotional. He was part of the ship, part of the song. "It is done," Nyla said, her light pattern settling back into a steady glow. She looked at him, and the light on her face area conveyed something that felt like approval or perhaps pride. "The shield is strengthened, but it will only delay them. We must prepare." Prepare for what? Jax didn't ask. He felt the shift in the ship, a subtle tightening, a sense of readiness. And he felt a connection to Nyla, strong and unwavering, a silent promise of mutual protection. They were in this together now, bonded by accident, united by a shared threat. The physical tension of being trapped had evolved into the emotional tension of a shared, dangerous future. With the primary shield strengthened, a new reality settled over Jax and Nyla. They weren't just hiding. They were preparing for a confrontation. The ship, the Weaver, felt different now. Not just a dormant entity, but a conscious being anticipating conflict. And Jax, the accidental bondmate, was intrinsically linked to its fate. They moved through the ship not randomly, but with purpose. Nyla guided him through corridors he hadn't seen before, areas that pulsed or contained energy or housed strange, dormant machinery. She didn't offer lengthy explanations, relying on her light patterns and the subtle resonance between them to convey meaning. Jax learned to interpret her speak. A rapid pulse meant urgency. Slow waves meant calm or instruction. Complex swirls were information. Bright flares were moments of intense emotion or focus. And the scent, always present, shifted with her mood from the sweet calm of contentment to a sharp, metallic tang when potential threats were near. This chamber. Nyla's voice resonated in a large, circular room filled with intricate, interconnected conduits that hum faintly. It regulates the song's output. It can be reconfigured for defense. Her light patterns on the conduits pulsed, showing him where to touch, where to apply his resonance. It felt like working with a living organism, the metal responding to his touch, the energy flowing through him and into the ship systems. It was exhausting, but also exhilarating, a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. Days blurred together. They worked, they moved. They were always aware of the clock ticking, the unknown enemies approaching. There was little rest, less food. Jax had brought minimal rations, and the ship offered nothing edible for humans. The scarcity added another layer of vulnerability, a constant reminder of his physical limitations compared to Nyla's apparent self-sufficiency. The confinement, the shared danger, the intense, nonverbal communication, it all drew them closer. Physical intimacy became a natural extension of their bond. Not always the overwhelming intensity of the claiming, but moments of shared touch while working on the ship systems, Nyla's light mingling with his human warmth. Sometimes, they would simply rest pressed against each other in a quiet corner, the hum of the ship enveloping them, her scent and light a calming presence in the darkness. There was a raw, uninhibited sensuality to these moments, driven by need, by the deep connection forged between them, and a constant underlying current of the Weaver's song. It was intimacy stripped bare of human pretense, purely resonant, purely shared. One cycle, huddled together in a recessed alcove, the silence broken only by the ship's hum. Jax found himself watching her light patterns flow, mesmerized. "Nyla," he said softly, "what happened to the rest of your species? The ones who built this place?" Her light patterns grew still for a moment, then flowed into a slow, mournful wave. The colors muted. The scent in the air grew sharp with sorrow. "They are gone." The song faded. The chorus fragmented. Only the Weaver endured. And its echo, fragmented, their resonance dispersed, like dust in the void. He absorbed that, a chill running through him. The Weaver, the ship, was the last of its kind, clinging to existence, its consciousness fragmented, needing a bondmate to hold it together. And Nyla was the last echo, the keeper of its song. It added a layer of profound loneliness to her being, to the ship's silent corridors. "I'm sorry," he said, reaching out to touch her arm. His human hand felt clumsy against her smooth, glowing form. Her light patterns shifted, flowing into his touch, mingling with the warmth of his hand. It wasn't just light. It felt like feeling, like an acknowledgement of his sorrow. The scent softened, carrying a note that felt like gratitude or perhaps acceptance. The bondmate. "Provide strength," she murmured, her voice low, resonant with ancient grief, yet layered with the new, fragile connection they shared. "Your core, it is vibrant. It sings a new note in the song." His core, his resonance. He still didn't fully understand mechanics, but he felt the truth of it. His presence, his energy, was vital to her, to the Weaver. It was a heavy responsibility, one he'd never sought, born of an accident. But looking at Nyla, seeing the quiet vulnerability in her light patterns, feeling the deep hum of their shared bond, he knew he wouldn't run. Not anymore. The external threat was still looming, a dark shadow on the edge of their awareness. But in the heart of the ancient ship, in the shared darkness and soft glow, the intimate connection between the human and the echo, the bondmate and the Weaver, was deepening, becoming an anchor in the coming storm. The emotional tension was shifting, from confusion and survival to a quiet, profound intimacy built on shared vulnerability and purpose. Days passed, measured only by the cycles of the ship's internal rhythms and the growing tension in the void outside. Jax and Nyla continued their work, reconfiguring defensive systems, fortifying the Weaver's heart chamber. Jax's body had adapted, in part, to the constant hum in Nyla's pervasive scent, though moments of dizziness and sensory overload still occurred, usually when she was expressing strong emotions through her light patterns. Their intimacy had also deepened, becoming a quiet, constant current beneath the surface of their work and shared danger. It wasn't always overtly physical, but manifested in stolen touches, shared silence, the way Nyla's light would subtly wrap around him when he was near, the way his own energy felt attuned to hers. The casual nature of their early physical encounters, bore the confusing claiming, had evolved into something quieter, more emotionally resonant. One cycle. While reinforcing a blast door near the ship's periphery, Nyla's light patterns flared with sudden intensity, sharp lines cutting through the muted glow. The scent in the air turned acrid, metallic. "They are close," she stated, her voice taut with urgency. Within the outer sphere, Jax felt his adrenaline spike. This was it, the confrontation they had been preparing for. His hand went to his sidearm, a useless gesture he knew, but one that grounded him. "How many? What kind of ships?" Nyla's light patterns pulsed rapidly, shifting through complex configurations. 2 vessels. Resonance signature, unknown. Not of this sector. Unknown. That was rarely good news out here. "Are they hailing?" "No. They are probing, testing the shields." Her light patterns were agitated, swirling with a mix of defensive readiness and something that felt like apprehension. "Okay," Jax said, forcing himself to think clearly. "We finished the main shield. Is the Weaver's heart secured?" "Yes. It is protected. The bondmate's resonance, it fortifies it." Her light pattern settled slightly as she looked at him, a flicker of something that felt like reassurance, or perhaps reliance, passing between them. "Good. What about escape pods? Are there any functional?" A slim chance, but he had to ask. Nyla's light patterns were still. Then a slow, deliberate fade to a dim glow, a visual representation of negation. The vessel endures. It does not flee. Right. No escape. It was a ship, the Weaver, Nyla, and him against whatever was out there. The realization settled heavily in his gut. He was fully committed now, whether he liked it or not. "Okay," he said, a grim determination settling over him. "Then we fight." He looked at Nyla. "What's our advantage?" Her light patterns brightened, flowing into a pattern of anticipation, focus. The Weaver is ancient. Its systems are unknown to them. We control the structure. We use the song. Use the song? "The bondmate's resonance," she explained, her light patterns pulsing with the ship's hum. It can guide the song's power through the conduits for defense, for offense, offense. That was new. He hadn't thought of the weaver as a weapon, but of course it was. Anything this powerful could be turned to destructive purposes. They moved towards the ship's control core, a vast chamber filled with humming machinery and glowing panels that mirrored Nyla's own luminescence. As they entered, the ship's hum intensified, wrapping around them a palpable force. Nyla went to a central console, her light patterns connecting with the glowing controls. "Place your hands here," she instructed, gesturing to a large, circular panel that pulsed with the same rhythm as the weaver's heart lattice. "Connect your core. Feel the flow." Jax placed his hands on the panel. The shock wasn't painful this time, but a tidal wave of pure energy, flowing through him from the ship, from the weaver, amplified by Nyla's presence beside him. He felt the ship's system spread out before his mind's eye. A vast, complex network of energy conduits, defensive shields, and dormant weapon systems. It was overwhelming, exhilarating. He was no longer just a passenger. He was part of the ship's consciousness, guided by Nyla, connected to the ancient power of the weaver. "Feel them," Nyla said, her voice a low thrum beside him. Her hand rested on his, her light mingling with the energy flowing through the panel. "The probes, the tests, they seek weakness." He felt it, subtle pressure points on the outer hull, distant vibrations as the enemy ships tested their defenses. He saw, through the ship's awareness, the two unknown vessels, dark shapes against the starfield, circling like predators. "Guide the energy," Nyla instructed. "Push against them. Show them the song is awake." He focused, channeling the energy flowing through him, guided by Nyla's subtle prompts. He felt the shields pulse outwards, a silent wave of force pushing back against the probing attacks. The enemy ships recoiled slightly, their energy signatures flickering with surprise. "They understand." Nyla's light patterns flared with satisfaction. "The weaver is not dead. The bondmate is here." The fight had begun, not with weapons fired yet, but with a silent battle of wills, of energy, fought through the heart of an ancient ship. Jax was no longer just surviving. He was fighting, defending the strange new reality he had stumbled into, defending Nyla, defending the weaver. The external conflict was here, and it was merging with the internal, emotional journey, solidifying the bond between them under fire. The silent standoff didn't last. The enemy ships, having confirmed the weaver was awake and defended, shifted tactics. The probing attack ceased, replaced by focused, sustained energy blasts. Jax felt the impact deep within the ship's structure, vibrating to the control panel. Through his body, he saw, through the ship's awareness, the energy shield shimmering, holding but under strain. "They're relentless," Nyla said, her voice tight. Her light patterns were a rapid, agitated display, mirroring the stress on the ship's systems. "Can the shields hold?" Jax asked, pushing back against the energy flow, trying to reinforce the stress points. It was like trying to hold back a flood with his bare hands, except the flood was made of pure energy, and his hands were his own strange resonance amplified by the weaver. "For a time," she replied, "but they seek the core. They will focus their power." "We need to hit back," Jack stated. Defense wasn't enough. He might be a reluctant bondmate, but he was also a rogue, a survivor, used to taking the fight to the enemy. "You said the song could be used for offense?" Nyla's light patterns shifted, a moment of hesitation before forming into a complex configuration that felt like calculation, assessment. "Yes, the conduits can channel the song outwards, as a pulse, or a directed beam." "A beam?" Jack said, his mind racing. "Can we target their weapons? Their engines?" "Possible," she confirmed, "but it requires significant resonance. The bondmate must focus the flow, guide the song's intent. Guide the song's intent." It was more than just being a battery. It was being a conductor, a focus of the ancient power of the weaver. He felt the weight of that responsibility settle on him, heavy but also empowering. "Tell me how," he said, pressing his hands harder onto the control panel. Nyla's light patterns flowed over the console, highlighting specific controls, specific pathways within the ship's energy network. Feel the conduits. Feel the connection to the void. Extend your awareness outwards. He closed his eyes, focusing on a flow of energy through his hands, through his body, connecting to the vastness of the ship, and then, guided by Nyla's subtle prompts and the resonance between them, pushing outwards past the hull into the cold, dark space where the enemy ships waited. He felt their presence, their hostile energy signatures, distinct from the neutral void. Target the energy sources, Nyla instructed, her voice a low hum, her hand resting over on the panel. He felt her resonance guiding him, refining his focus. He pictured the enemy ships, focusing on the core of their power, the thrumming of their engines, the focused intent of their weapon systems. He gathered the Weaver's song, the pure, ancient energy flowing through him, and shaped it, directed it, channeling it outwards along the pathways Nyla indicated. He felt the beam fire, not as a visible light or sound, but as a focused surge of energy through the void. On the ship's awareness screen, he saw one of the enemy vessels flicker, its energy output dipping sharply. A moment later, the sustained fire on the shields lessened. Direct hit! And Jax breathed, a jolt of triumph running through him. He'd never felt anything like it, directing an ancient, alien power like this. They will adapt, Nyla warned, her light pattern still focused, intense. They understand the threat. They will seek the source. The source. Him. They knew the Weaver was awake, and they knew there was a bondmate directing its power. That made him a target. The external conflict had just become intensely personal. Shield the control core, he said immediately, his focus shifting from offense to defense. He channeled the energy flow inwards, reinforcing the core's structural integrity, its energy shielding. The second enemy ship, or perhaps the first recovering, hit the hull with renewed force, this time focused directly on their location. The control core shuddered around them. Alarms blared, not auditory, but felt as a discordant vibration through the ship. Dust rained from the ceiling. Nyla stumbled, her light patterns flickering wildly. The hull is breached. Nearby, a breach. In the middle of the fight, trapped on an ancient ship with a glowing alien and her conscious vessel. The mid-story conflict had arrived, sharp and dangerous, manifesting as force vulnerability and environmental danger, testing the fragile bond they had forged. The core of the ship, their anchor point, was under direct assault. The breach alarm screamed their silent vibration through control core, a jarring disruption to the Weaver's song. Dust and debris rained from the ceiling. Jax felt the sickening lurch of the deck plates beneath his feet as the ship's integrity was compromised. Nyla's light patterns were a chaotic storm, flickering and surging with distress. "Nyla!" he yelled, though his voice was swallowed by the cacophony of internal alarms. He grabbed her arm, her form solid but vibrating with stress. "We need to get out of here." "The cord is vulnerable," she responded, her voice strained, the resonance distorted. Her light pattern shifted, focusing on the damaged areas, showing the energy bleeding away into the vacuum. "We can't defend it from here," he argued, pulling her toward the exit from the control core. "If we stay, we'll be exposed." But she resisted, her body rigid. "I must reinforce the shield." The Weaver. Another impact rocked the ship closer this time. A section of the ceiling structure groaned and collapsed near the entrance. Access was blocked. "The path is cut." Jax swore, scanning the collapsing debris. Trapped again. Nyla's light patterns shifted to a pattern of desperate focus. She turned back to the control panel, ignoring the falling debris, the structural collapse around them. "The conduits, if I can reroute the primary flow, you'll be exposed." Jax grabbed her again, trying to pull her away from the console, away from the direct line of fire that was now tearing through the ship's defenses. "I am the Echo," she cried, her light patterns flaring with fierce determination. "My purpose is a song." He understood. She was willing to sacrifice herself to protect the Weaver, to protect the song, even if it meant leaving the bondmate vulnerable. It was her duty, her programming, her core being, but he was human. His core being screamed survival, and protecting the people, the beings, he cared about regardless of programming. He wasn't ready to lose her, not after everything. He made a split-second decision. He couldn't pull her away. He couldn't convince her to abandon the Weaver, but he could try to shield her. "Then I'm anchoring the Echo," he shouted over the din. He shoved her towards a control panel, towards a task she felt compelled to complete. Then he threw himself between her and the collapsing section of the ceiling, between her and the direction of the incoming fire that tore through the ship's weakened hull. Metal screamed, energy conduits snapped and sparked. The ship shuddered violently. Jax felt a searing pain rip across his side as debris struck him, tearing through his suit, through skin and muscle. He cried out, collapsing to the deck, pain blooming in his side, spreading like wildfire. His vision swam. The world tilted. Through the haze of pain, he saw Nyla kneeling beside him, her light patterns a frantic, swirling display of distress and alarm. The sharp, metallic tang of her scent filled his lungs, now mixed with the coppery smell of his own blood. "Bondmate!" Her voice was a tight, distressed hum. Her hand hovered over his wound, her light pulsing rapidly, as if trying to mend the torn flesh with pure energy. He reached out a hand, his fingers finding her form. "Go!" He rasped, the word a struggle against the pain. "Shield the core. Finish the song thing." Her light pattern settled into a pattern of profound sorrow, radiating a wave of pure grief that slammed into him, mirroring the ache in his injured side. "The bondmate is broken." "Not broken," he managed, forcing a weak smile. "Just leaky." "Go, Nyla. They're still attacking." She hesitated, caught between her duty to the Weaver and her bond to him. The internal conflict raged within her, visible in the chaotic dance of her light patterns. He could feel her struggle through their connection, a wave of emotional pain and conflict washing over him. But the ship shuddered again, a more violent impact this time. The enemy was pressing their advantage, aiming for the core. Nyla looked at him, her light patterns settling into a pattern of grim determination, tinged with deep sadness. She squeezed his hand, her touch sending a wave of soothing warmth through his injured side, momentarily dulling the pain. Then she turned and returned to the control panel, her light patterns flowing back into sync with the ship's systems, focused on the task of rerouting the primary flow, of shielding the Weaver's core. Jax lay on the deck, the pain intense, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He watched Nyla, her glowing form a beacon in the darkening control core, her light patterns a silent testament to her resolve. He had shielded her, protected the Echo. Now she was protecting the Weaver, and in doing so, protecting him, the bondmate. The conflict was external, environmental, and deeply personal. He was injured, vulnerable, separated by circumstance, but the emotional bond forged between them felt stronger than ever, a lifeline in the chaos. Pain was a fire in Jax's side, burning hot and sharp. He lay on the cold metal deck, the sound of the battle outside muffled and distorted by his own ragged breathing and the chaotic internal alarms of the damaged ship. Nyla was at the control panel, her back to him, her light patterns a steady, focused rhythm as she worked to reroute energy, to shield the Weaver's core. He watched her, his vision hazy, the pain a constant, brutal counterpoint to quiet determination radiating from her. He felt incredibly vulnerable. His life, his very survival, depended on an alien woman he'd accidentally bonded with, on an ancient ship fighting for his life against unknown enemies. He was just a human, flesh and blood, easily broken. Nyla, with her glowing resilience, her non-human purpose, felt leagues away, even though she was only feet from him. The bond between them, however, was a tangible thing, a resonant hum that connected them even across the deck. He could feel her focus, her determination, the weight of her responsibility. He could also feel the undercurrent of distress, the anxiety that pulsed beneath the surface of her controlled light patterns. She was worried about him. The thought brought a strange warmth to his chest, a counterpoint to the burning pain in his side. He tried to move, to shift into a more comfortable position, but the pain flared, sharp and incapacitating. He gritted his teeth, a soft groan escaping his lips. Nyla's light patterns flickered. She didn't turn, her focus still on the panel, but her voice was tight with concern. Bondmate? Are you? The flow is stabilizing. The shield holds. Good, he whispered, each word a struggle. Just hang in there. I'm fine. He was a terrible liar, especially about pain. She didn't respond verbally, but her light pattern shifted, a subtle wave flowing towards him, carrying a familiar, comforting scent, now tinged with sharp note of worry. He felt a gentle wave of energy wash over him, a soothing warmth that momentarily dulled the edge of the pain. It was Nyla, using her resonance, using the Weaver's song, trying to heal him. It wasn't enough to close a wound, but ease the suffering, a silent act of care that spoke volumes. He closed his eyes, focusing on that warmth, on the connection between them. He had been alone for so long, relying only on himself, building walls to keep the world out. And in a few short cycles, this alien woman, this echo of a dying race, had shattered those walls, accidentally bonded with him, and now was pouring her energy, her concern, into easing his pain. It was overwhelming. The sounds of battle outside seemed to recede. The chaos of the alarms quieted as Nyla brought the systems under control. The dominant feeling was a hum of the ship, stable and strong, and the deep resonance of their bond, a lifeline stretching across the damaged control core. He felt Nyla's light patterns shift again, becoming less focused on controls, more on him. She turned from the panel, her glowing form a beacon in the dimness. She moved towards him, gliding across the deck, her movement fluid and silent. She knelt beside him, her light illuminating his injured side, the dark stain spreading on his suit. He looked up at her, at the complex, shifting patterns on her face area, conveying a depth of emotion he was only beginning to understand. Pity, worry, affection. The shield holds, she said softly. Her voice resonated with exhaustion and relief. They have retreated. For now, the Weaver is safe. You did it, he breathed, a genuine smile touching his lips despite the pain. Her light patterns pulsed with a complex blend of emotions. Success, relief, but also profound sorrow for his injury. Her hand hovered over his wound again, the soothing warmth flowing into him, a constant current of care. The bondmate is injured, she murmured, the words heavy with regret. I could not protect you fully. You saved the ship, he said. You saved the song. That's more important. Even as he said it, he knew it wasn't entirely true. In that moment, with her kneeling beside him, her light and scent filling his senses, easing his pain, nothing felt more important than her presence, her safety. She leaned closer, her forehead touching his, a gesture that was profoundly alien yet intensely intimate. He felt the warmth of her core, the deep hum of her being, flowing into him, mingling with his own, pushing back against the pain, against the isolation. The air was filled with her scent, a powerful comfort. The bondmate is a song, she whispered, the resonance vibrating through him. Without the bondmate, the song will fade. In that moment, lying injured on the deck of an ancient ship, surrounded by the aftermath of battle, he understood. Their fates were intertwined. He was not just an anchor for the Weaver. He was the heart of the song, its future. And she was its echo, bound to him, protecting him with everything she had. The external conflict had forced them into shared vulnerability, deepening the emotional intimacy and solidifying their mutual reliance. The pain in Jax's side remained a dull throb, but Nyla's constant flow of soothing energy kept it manageable. He lay there for a long cycle, propped against a section of bulkhead, Nyla a luminous presence beside him. The ship was quiet now, the alarm silenced, the hum of the Weaver a steady, reassuring presence. They had survived the initial attack. Are they gone? Jax asked, his voice clearer now. Nyla's light patterns were calm, flowing in slow, observational waves. Their resonance signatures are receding. They have moved beyond the outer sphere. They will regroup, study our defenses. They will return. Right. Of course they will. Jax sighed. Eternal commitment, cosmic paperweight, and now a recurring enemy. This gig just kept getting better. We must find a place of deeper concealment. Nyla said. The bondmate's injury. It requires rest. The Weaver's energy is depleted from the defense. Sounds like a plan, Jax agreed. He pushed himself up gingerly, wincing as the movement pulled at his wound. Nyla was instantly there, her arm supporting him, her touch radiating warmth and stability. He leaned on her, finding her strength, her non-human resilience, a solid anchor. They moved slowly through the ship, leaving the damaged control core behind. Nyla guided him through unfamiliar passages, deeper into the ancient vessel's interior. The hum of the Weaver grew stronger as they moved away from the damaged sections, entering areas that felt untouched by time, preserving the core resonance. They arrived in a chamber that was unlike any he had seen. It was a vast, cavernous space, filled with soft, ambient light that seemed to emanate from the very walls. In the center, a large structure pulsed with gentle, rhythmic glow, surrounded by smaller, crystalline formations that hummed with latent energy. This felt like the heart of the Weaver, the true core of its being. The sanctuary, Nyla stated, her voice soft, reverent. Her light patterns pulsed with awe and comfort. The safest place within the vessel. Here, the song is purest. The bondmate can rest. Heal. She guided him towards a central glowing structure. As they approached, the ambient light intensified, wrapping around them like a warm blanket. The air here was different, clearer, vibrant with energy, and Nyla's scent was rich and complex, carrying notes of peace and deep connection. She helped him settle down near the base of the central structure, its gentle warmth seeping into him, easing the ache in his side. He leaned back, breathing in the clean, energizing air, feeling the deep, steady pulse of the Weaver's song surrounding him. Nyla sat beside him, her body pressing close, her light a soft glow in the ambient radiance of the sanctuary. She didn't speak, but he felt her presence intensely, a sense of watchful care, of deep, unwavering connection. Her hand found his, fingers intertwining, her touch radiating that familiar, healing warmth. This place, Jax murmured, looking around a vast, glowing chamber. It's incredible. Nyla's light patterns flowed, agreeing. It is the origin where the Weaver first sang. He closed his eyes, letting the peace of the sanctuary wash over him, letting the Weaver's song resonate through his injured body, guided by Nyla's touch, her presence. He was a long way from his old life, from scraping by on the fringe, running from shadows. He was bonded to an ancient alien consciousness, hunted by unknown enemies, anchored by an alien woman who communicated with light and scent. It was terrifying, confusing, and utterly, completely his. He felt Nyla's ship beside him, her body molding against his. The intimacy wasn't demanding here, but soft, comforting, a quiet merging of presence. He felt her light patterns shift, flowing into patterns that felt like contentment, peace, and a deep, possessive claim. He was hers, and she was his, bound by accident, forged in conflict, finding a fragile sanctuary in the heart of an ancient ship. Nyla, he said, opening his eyes, looking at her glowing form beside him. Thank you. Her light patterns pulsed softly, a gentle rhythm that felt like a direct response to his gratitude, a silent acceptance. She leaned her head on his shoulder, her presence a weight, a warmth, a promise. He was injured, hunted, lost in an alien universe. But he wasn't alone. He had found a connection deeper than words, stronger than fear. The emotional tension was resolved, replaced by a profound sense of belonging, of mutual protection, of a quiet, earned intimacy in the heart of the unknown. Time in the sanctuary flowed differently, marked by the gentle pulse of the Weaver's song and the slow mending of Jax's wound. Nyla remained constantly by his side, her presence a quiet anchor, her light a soft comfort. She didn't speak often here, relying on the deeper language of resonance, touch, and the shifting patterns of her light. Jax, too, found himself speaking less, listening more to the silent conversation between Nyla, the Weaver, and himself. The sanctuary was more than just a safe place. It was a place of healing for both him and the ship. Nyla's energy, guided by her connection to Weaver, flowed into him, accelerating his recovery in ways that defied human medicine. The pain in his side faded, the torn tissue knitting back together with impossible speed, leaving only a faint scar and a lingering connection to the place where light and energy had flowed into him. As his physical strength returned, His awareness of the weaver's song deepened. He could feel the ancient consciousness around him, a vast, complex tapestry of energy, memory, and purpose. He understood, not with his mind but with his core, how the weaver needed his resonance, his human vitality, to remain coherent, to sing its song. And he understood Nyla's role as the echo, the interpreter, the physical manifestation of the weaver's will and connection to the bondmate. Their intimacy here was profound, quiet, woven into the fabric of the sanctuary. It was in a way Nyla's light pulsed in sync with his breathing, in the shared warmth of their bodies pressed together, in the silent understanding that passed between them without need for words. The earlier urgency, the confusion, the raw physicality, it had all settled into a deep, resonant connection, an intimacy built on shared vulnerability, mutual reliance, and the silent, powerful force of the bond. One cycle, as his wound was almost fully healed, Jax felt a subtle shift in the weaver's song, a note of anticipation entering the steady hum. Nyla's light patterns changed too, becoming more defined, more focused. "They are near again," she stated, her voice clear, alert. Jax sat up fully, testing his side. The pain was gone. He felt strong, strangely energized. The sanctuary had healed him, integrated him further into the song. "How near?" "Within the outer sphere," she replied. "Their resonance is stronger this time. They have enhanced their vessels." Enhanced. They were adapting, coming back harder. The conflict wasn't over. "We're ready," Jax said, the words surprising him with their certainty. He wasn't just ready to fight. He was ready to defend this. The sanctuary, the weaver, Nyla, the bond they shared. Nyla turned to him, her light patterns flowing into a display of deep approval, a sense of shared purpose. "The bondmate is strong. The song is ready." They left the sanctuary, moving back toward the core of the ship, towards the systems they had fortified together. The atmosphere had shifted again, the quiet peace of the sanctuary replaced by the alert readiness of a vessel preparing for battle. But this time, Jax didn't feel trapped. He felt a part of something, integral to its defense. They reached the control core, the repairs evident but the fundamental integrity restored. Jax went to the control panel, placing his hands on the pulsing surface. The energy flowed through him instantly, stronger and clearer than before. He felt the full scope of the weaver's power, the defensive capabilities, the offensive potential. He wasn't just guiding the flow this time. He was a conduit, a core element. Nyla stood beside him, her hand on his, her light patterns merging with the console's glow, their resonant a single, powerful force. "They are here," she announced, her voice calm but firm. Jax felt their presence. Closer now, more aggressive. He saw them through the ship's awareness. 3 vessels this time, their energy signatures powerful, focused. "Shields up," he stated, channeling the weaver's energy outwards, reinforcing the defensive screen around the ship. The attack came immediately, a barrage of energy weapons hitting the shields. The ship shuddered, but the shields held, stronger than before, humming with the combined power of the weaver, Nyla, and him. "Targeting systems active," Nyla said. "Guide the song, bondmate. Let them hear its strength." Jax focused, channeling the power, directing it to the conduits. He felt the weaver's ancient song surge outwards, a focused beam of destructive energy aimed at the lead enemy vessel. The ship flared brightly. Then its energy signature plummeted. It listed in the void, crippled, a moment of silence, of shock from the remaining enemy vessels. Then they adapted. They spread out, changing their attack pattern, trying to flank the weaver, aiming for weak points. Jax and Nyla worked in tandem, a seamless unit. He felt the attacks coming, guided by Nyla's intuition and the weaver's awareness, and shifted the shields, channeled offensive pulses, anticipated their moves. Their communication was almost entirely nonverbal, a flow of energy, light, and shared resonance. Their intimacy wasn't physical in this moment, but it was profound, a perfect merging of purpose and power. The battle raged, a silent ballet of energy and will in the cold vacuum of space. Jax felt the exhaustion building, the drain on his energy, but the connection to Nyla, to the weaver, sustained him. They were fighting not just for survival, but for the preservation of something ancient, something vital. Finally, after what felt like cycles, the enemy resonance signatures broke formation, scattering, fleeing into the void. The attack ceased. The hum of the weaver settled back into its steady, powerful song. They had won. For now, exhausted but triumphant, Jax leaned his forehead against the cool surface of the control panel, breathing hard. Nyla sagged against his side, her light patterns dimming slightly with fatigue, but flowing with relief and deep satisfaction. "It is done," she whispered, her voice soft, resonant. "We did it," Jax corrected, turning to look at her, a smile spreading across his face. "We did it together." He felt the deep, undeniable truth of that statement. They were a unit, bonded, integrated, and they had faced down the storm and emerged victorious. The external conflict was resolved for now, paving the way for the emotional and plot closure, solidifying the earned intimacy and mutual protection. The battle was over, the enemy ships retreating into the distance, their resonance signatures fading from the Weaver's awareness. The vast chambers of the ancient ship settled into a profound silence, broken only by the steady, reassuring hum of the Weaver's song. Jax leaned back on the control panel, feeling the lingering energy buzzing in his fingertips, in his core. He was utterly exhausted, but a deep sense of accomplishment settled over him. He had come seeking salvage and found a universe of the unexpected. Nyla remained beside him, her body warm against his, her light patterns flowing with calm exhaustion and quiet contentment. The sharp, metallic scent of battle was gone, replaced by her familiar, sweet metallic perfume, comforting and grounding. "They will not return soon," she said, her voice soft. "The song's strength, it has shown them the cost." "Good," Jax murmured. "Maybe they'll tell their friends." He managed a weak smile. She didn't respond verbally, but her light patterns pulsed with a rhythm that felt like shared amusement. The nonverbal communication that had defined so much of their time together felt natural now, a language spoken with the core. He turned to her fully, reaching out to take her hand. Her fingers intertwined with his. The familiar connection flowed between them, deeper and stronger than ever before. "So," he said, the quiet intimacy of the moment settling around them. "What now? The Weaver is safe. The song is strong. We're bonded." Her light pattern shifted, flowing into a pattern that was both open and vulnerable, radiating a sense of peace and profound connection. The Weaver rests. The bondmate has found its purpose. The Echo has fulfilled its charge. "Fulfilled your charge?" Jax asked, a flicker of apprehension. "Does that mean?" Her hand tightened slightly on his. "My charge was to guide the bondmate, to protect the song. Now, the bond is established. The song is secure." Her light patterns flowed into shapes that felt like a question, tinged with anticipation. "The bondmate's purpose is with the Echo, to share the song, to build anew, to build anew." The words hung in the air, filled with possibility. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were a beginning, a human and an alien Echo, bound by an ancient Weaver, standing on the precipice of an unknown future. "Build anew," Jax repeated, letting the idea settle. It was terrifying, yes, but also held a powerful allure. A life with Nyla, with the Weaver, exploring the universe not as a solitary rogue, but as part of something ancient, something new. He looked at her, at the steady, unwavering light of her presence, felt the deep resonance of their bond, the warmth of her hand in his. He had stumbled into this, yes, but he had chosen it too, in 1,000 small ways, in every moment he had stayed, every time he had fought beside her, every time he had allowed himself to feel. "Yeah," he said, his voice firm, a quiet certainty settling into his heart. "Yeah, I think I'd like that." He squeezed her hand. "Building anew, with you." Nyla's light patterns exploded in a silent, beautiful burst of vibrant color, a language of pure joy and acceptance that resonated deep within him. The scent in the air became intoxicating, sweet and rich with contentment. She leaned into him, her body molding against his, her light enveloping him in a warm, glowing embrace. They stayed there in the quiet control core, the hum of the Weaver's song filling the space, their bodies pressed together, their resonances mingled, They had faced danger, misunderstanding, and pain, but they had also found connection, purpose, and a love that transcended species and stars. The accidental ritual had become their destiny, the unexpected bond their foundation. Their future was unknown, stretching out before them like the vast, unexplored void, but they would face it together, two disparate beings bound by light, sent in the quiet, powerful hum of a shared song. The emotional and plot closure was complete, leading to an earned intimacy, mutual protection, and a hopeful new beginning forged in the heart of an ancient ship.